Good morning. Hope everybody is doing well. You may have noticed a thank you short posted on the channel last week. A huge thank you to everybody for their support in getting us to 3,000 subscribers. I know the channel is for casual audiophile content in association with the magazine, but it has been a lot of fun. Please continue liking and subscribing, and let's get to 4,000. Also, I'm always banging on about the comments. I do enjoy reading them. Please keep adding them. Started early this morning, listening to the new UHQR Asia. Going to get that review up by Monday or Tuesday next week. Also coming soon is the new OJC Craft Recordings Sunday the Village Vanguard with the Bill Evans Trio. Look for that review at audiophile.com soon. Today is a video about my two preferred original vinyl pressings, not reissues, of what I and many others consider Bartók's greatest work, music for strings, percussion, and celeste. Sure, I know, Concerto for Orchestra, Miraculous Mandarin, Polybius Castle, the violin and piano concertos, etc. They're all amazing. But for me, the invention, cohesion, and rhythmic and melodic vitality with true Hungarian feeling, let alone the unique orchestration, make it Bartók's best. Music for strings, percussion, and celeste is considered a significant 20th century composition. It was composed in 1936. It was commissioned by Swiss pharmaceutical billionaire and conductor Paul Sarker for his Basel Kammer Orchestra. Here we get 4 movements of various tempos and orchestration in the composer's mature style, blending Hungarian folk melodies and his advanced modernist techniques, not serial or 12-tone techniques. For those averse to that style of music, did you see my last video on Varese? Music for strings, percussion, and celeste may be enjoyed for the melodies and complex but accessible harmonies, as well as the hyperkinetic rhythmic energy. Got your attention yet? For horror fans and admirers of Stanley Kubrick, he used the third movement of strings for his movie The Shining. So let's talk briefly about the two recordings in question. Let's start with the Decca. It's a 1963 recording produced by Eric Smith and engineered by you-know-who, the great Kenneth Wilkinson. And it was recorded in you-know-where, Kingsway Hall. This was coupled with one of the other great pieces by Bartók, The Miraculous Mandarin, which makes it a very valuable record. And our other recording is with the Chicago Symphony and Fritz Reiner on RCA Living Stereo. It was produced by Richard Moore and engineered by Louis Layton, their main team in Chicago, in 1958 at Orchestra Hall in Chicago. And this was coupled with Hungarian sketches. A lovely piece, not quite as a large and spectacular piece as the Miraculous Mandarin on the Decca, but still a very fine piece. Other than these two fabulous recordings, there were other wonderful performances and recordings, but mainly on CD. One is with Chicago Symphony on Deutsche Grammophon with Pierre Boulez. Another one is with the great Hungarian conductor Ferenc Frickcsay on Deutsche Grammophon, with the Berlin Radio Symphony, not the world's greatest orchestra, but he makes them play wonderfully. There's also an Academy of St. Martin's in the Fields with Neville Marriner, a surprising one, on Decca. And also another very good one with the Concertgebouw Orchestra on Decca with Bernard Haitink. I think if you have any of those 4 recordings on digital, I think you're fine. But if you want to go full vinyl and get the greatest audiophile recordings that sound absolutely spectacular, then the 2 we're discussing are the way to go. As I mentioned earlier, the piece is in 4 movements. The first and third movements are slow. The second and fourth are very fast. There are no key signatures. The first movement is called Andante Tranquillo, walking tempo and very peaceful. But the Tranquillo is a kind of an interesting term because it's quite an incredibly intense and stressful piece harmonically, and it builds and builds and builds. And both conductors Schulte and Reiner do this exceptionally well. Then there's an allegro, followed by the famous adagio that Kubrick used in The Shining, with a lot of wonderful techniques for timpani and xylophone, and of course those very weird high glissandos on the strings. Amazingly creepy and very effective, especially in the film. And finally, the Allegro Molto, which is basically a folk dance, Hungarian, very complex syncopated rhythms. And again, we'll discuss each of them independently to see which ones we like the best. And there will be a choice at the end. The harmonic invention in this piece is remarkable, especially considering there's no key signatures. The instrumentation is with the strings to be placed in two different groups, first group and second group, regular strings, violins, violas, cellos, and double basses. And the percussion, a snare drum without snares, a snare drum with snares, cymbals, tam-tam, and bass drum, all to be played by one player. A timpani part, which is a timpani part to end all the timpani parts, very challenging. Xylophone, and then the celesta. And the celesta player takes over the piano at some part. And of course, you've got a harp. He also gives very specific places for the position of the orchestra. It runs for about 26 minutes. Slightly different location for the fun part, the unscripted part. My kitchen. Hope the sound is okay. Gets a little bit boomy in here sometimes. These are the two records in question. This is the Decca. Music for strings, percussion, and celeste. London Symphony, George Solti. It's the back. Another gem by Kenneth Wilkinson from Kingsway Hall. And this is the Reiner, Living Stereo RCA. It's very interesting. This is says it's printed in Canada. You see that? But I can show you the label. It's the same runout as Indianapolis, and this is a 3S. So there is some conjecture that the metalwork was sent up to Montreal to be pressed. There's no Indianapolis I in the runout. There's no M for Montreal. There's no H for Hollywood or R for Rockaway. So I'm assuming this is pressed with the U.S. metalwork. It's a wonderful, wonderful pressing. 3S. And the Decca is, I guess they would call this the ED3, the narrow band. Both of these records are not that expensive on Discogs. I'm not sure if there's a speaker's corner of the Decca. I think there is. And of course there's the analog productions of the Living Stereo. And I've not heard either, and I'm sure they're both wonderful. But I'm really into the originals lately, and this original Decca, mint condition, I think was no more than $50 or $60, and it's also got, like I said, on the other side, the Miraculous Mandarin, which is another magnificent performance. And 3S, I'm not really sure, but if it says it's a Canadian pressing, it'll be a lot cheaper. But of course, I think it's the American metalwork, so 2 for the price of 1 on this record. Anyway, let's go to the performances and the recordings. The performances, there's not much between them, as you would expect, with 2 great orchestras and 2 great conductors. Both Solti and Reiner were Hungarian and knew Bartók. I think they both studied with him. Bartók had a 30 to 40 year career as a teacher as well as a composer. And they both bring that kind of precision, total Hungarian soul to both their performances. The sound of the strings with mutes and without mutes. There's lots of places Bartók calls for mutes and lots of places without. Percussion-wise, you're listening for the timbre, xylophone, that's for sure. Both wonderful on these recordings. So I would say as a performance, you're not going to get much better. Some of those ones I mentioned on CD are outstanding as well. I mean, great orchestras like the Concertgebouw, the Berlin Philharmonic. When you're up to the Berlin Philharmonic, Vienna Philharmonic, LSO, Chicago, Concertgebouw, you basically got the top 5 orchestras around, and they have been for the last 50 years. So you're going to get, with a good conductor, great performances. But with Reiner and Solti, you get absolute precision, beauty of sound. Now, Chicago in 1958, I think this was recorded in 56 or even 57, Reiner had total control of that orchestra, and they were sounding outstanding. The London Symphony was still kind of in transition a little bit. The 40s and 50s were taken over by the Royal Philharmonic and the Philharmonia in London, with the Beecham and Legg putting all their money into those 2 orchestras. So a lot of people in London, they go where the money is. And London, the LSO kind of got shortchanged But about 1956, 55, 56, they started making some very good hires. Barry Tuckwell on French horn, and Dennis Wick on trombone, Jimmy Galway on flute, and there's a lot of great hires. The orchestra really came into its own, and it sounds every bit as good as the Chicago Symphony. Better? No. Different? Not really that much. The timbres of the instruments are pretty similar. Where we're going to see the differences is in the recording. So if you're just an orchestral nut and you want the best performances, you can get that one, and you can get that one, and you're going to be happy with either. Interpretation, the same. Now recordings, that's where I think it's going to be the differentiation. Chicago Symphony Hall, fantastic, and it sounds wonderful. Beautiful bloom around the sound, very tubey recording. The differences between the pizzicatos, the different types of pizzicatos with the glissandos, and the percussion sounds wonderful. Sometimes the cymbal will come in quietly and then crescendo and emphasize the violin line or the cello line, and the Chicago Symphony play it beautifully, so does the LSO, but it sounds beautiful in that hall in Chicago. But I will tell you that I think, as far as the recording is concerned, the Schulte has the edge, ever so slightly. Let me give you some examples. Well, first of all, if you go to the separation between the two string bands, much more separated on the Decca. So when you hear one string part played, and then the other string orchestra imitates it or answers the phrase, you're going to hear it a little more separated on the Decca. Percussion, the bloom around the percussion is a little bit more the timpani parts. There's a famous timpani part. I'll put it up, and the timpanist side that has to do reverse paradiddles or just a regular paradiddle, and if he doesn't want to cross his hands, especially with the sticks he's using, and you hear it a little bit clearer on the Decca. But that's about it. The bloom in Kingsway is just remarkable. It sounds beautiful. Kenneth Wilkinson knew it better than anybody, and he had his famous Decca tree recording technique. And then, of course, Louis Layton recording in Chicago. He knew what he was doing as well. So, if you have this one, you're lucky. If you have this one, you're lucky. I think the only thing that's going to do it is the coupling. The Hungarian Sketches is very nice. The Miraculous Mandarin is a massive, fantastic piece, and they play the hell out of it, the LSO. It's really good. If you have any of the CDs and you're enjoying them, and you have a good CD player and good playback, you're fine. If you want to get the very, very best vinyl copy that's affordable, get a Decca ED3 Unaraband, $50 for a clean copy. And if you already have the Chicago, or you want to get an Analog Productions, I'm not sure who did the recut, it was Bernie or Ryan K. Smith, but it'll be, it's going to be wonderful. And that may even tip the scales. But I wanted to do a video about the originals. So there you go. Listen, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.